So we've got a little viral clip we wanted to share with you guys. Amidst all the concern nationwide about harassment and anti-Semitism and hate speech on campus, this video went viral of a woman, we don't see her on camera, and she decided to remain anonymous, apparently wearing the keffiyeh scarf, which is associated with the Palestinian cause, walking around Cambridge near Harvard and getting harassed and stalked by this woman. I'll go ahead and play it for you, and on the other side, I'll reveal who this woman turns out to be. Take a look.
Between you and people who wanted to murder you. Hi, camera. Thank you for walking through neighborhoods and making families feel unsafe with your terrorist scarf.
Palestinians felt pretty unsafe when Israelis occupied their country, you know.
I'm glad you're so proud of the slaughtering of civilians.
I'm not.
So she's alleging she's making people feel unsafe by wearing a scarf, okay? Turns out this woman's name is Eve Gerber, and she is the wife of former Obama administration official and still very prominent economist who works at Harvard, Jason Furman. He's a professor at Harvard's Kennedy School. Very much reminiscent of our friend Stewart.
Yeah, Jason Furman literally might be, aside from Thomas Friedman, the most preeminent economist in this country. I'm not kidding.
Also, well, and partly because he gets in these like Twitter battles and goes on podcasts. He's very visible, very known and very visible, and obviously was an Obama official. And now his wife is out there. The woman who is wearing the scarf, according to her, Eve Gerber stopped her car, pulled over to get out and harass her and accuse her of wearing a quote-unquote terrorist scarf and making people feel unsafe. I mean, it's insane on a lot of levels. I also have to comment on the fact that there are like wild turkeys or something.
Yeah, we're wondering about that.
I don't know what's going on.
We're like, why are there wild turkeys in Cambridge, Massachusetts?
Yeah, anyway, we'll put that part to the side. But, you know, it really shines a light on some of the claims of people feeling unsafe and the crackdowns on campus on what I would describe as crackdowns on free speech based on people like her saying that a literal scarf is making her feel unsafe. This is insane, and it's like outrageous harassment that she's stalking this girl and accusing her of supporting terrorism because of a scarf that she's wearing.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, that's like the biggest Karen energy I've ever seen. It's just ridiculous, obviously. And yeah, I mean, the double standard here in terms of who, imagine if the person was wearing a yarmulke and they were walking through Dearborn, Michigan. It's like,
Thank you.
You think that was going to go viral?
And someone stalking them and accusing them of wearing, it would be that would be front page news. Every politician in America would be getting asked about it. Yeah. And who is really being made unsafe here? The person who stops her car and like follows this woman because she doesn't like her scarf, or the student who is being stalked by this total psycho?
It's just it's so crazy to me that somebody who is so rich and so privileged would be driving through their neighborhood and pull their car over just to engage in an altercation with their neighbor who did nothing to them, who's walking through their neighborhood. Yeah, like you said, too, with the scarf. I assume that this lady knows what that scarf means. A lot of people don't even know what the scarf is. Yeah. You know, when I lived in the Middle East, everybody had that scarf. I even had one. We thought it was cool. People even wore it as part of their thobe or whatever. And it was one of those where it wasn't even a statement on Palestine. It was just a scarf. It was not even a political statement. What if she had pulled over or said something to somebody who wasn't even doing it? And yet, even if they were, I see people who walk around Washington, anywhere, in this country. You see people wearing MAGA shirts whenever you get on a plane. What, are you gonna say something to them? Or if somebody who's wearing like a BLM shirt whenever I'm walking my dog. Same thing, let people live. Why do you care? It literally has zero impact on your life. And look, if you are actively threatening one of your neighbors, that's a very different conversation. But you're just walking down the street and somebody yells at you. Yeah. The only time I've ever experienced something like that is when I wasn't wearing a mask in the middle of, outside, by the way, and I was on the phone. Yeah. And somebody across the street yelled at me. Yeah.
By the way, listen, I want to be clear, like this conversation about anti-Semitism rising, like I have seen genuine incidents of anti-Semitism, here and around the world. I do not doubt for a second that there is an increase in anti-Semitism for a variety of reasons. One of them is that groups like the ADL insist on equating every Jewish person in the entire world with a state that is at best pushing for an ethnic cleansing and at worst on its way to a genocide. That could make Jews unsafe and spike anti-Semitism. Of course, it's on the bigots themselves for their actions and for the hatred that they hold. But when you see things like this, It also calls into question, to say the very least, the ADL puts out some report that's like, oh, anti-Semitic incidents have increased by 300%. Well, is this the kind of thing that you would classify as a quote-unquote anti-Semitic incident? Someone wearing a keffiyeh scarf or someone protesting at a rally and saying a chant that they don't like? Is that classified as a quote-unquote anti-Semitic incident? Because apparently this woman wearing the wrong scarf is making Eve Gerber feel that she and others in the neighborhood are unsafe.
Well, you're scratching the surface here, Krystal. I've been talking about this for a long time. I basically, and this will be controversial, I don't care, I don't believe most quote-unquote hate statistics. Anytime somebody's like, oh, it was a hate crime, I'm like, yeah, what was it? And the reason why is because I don't trust these classification regimes. The FBI, they compile these statistics, they do it based upon local crime stats and all these other, but they don't verify the actual criteria. For the reason why, for example, I've talked about this before, mass shooting. Well, Obama dropped the mass shooting definition from 4 to 3. Okay, so now there's more mass shootings. Well, are there really more mass shootings? And then what is so-called mass shooting? It turns out a huge bulk of people where 3 people get shot or more are mass suicide, tragic, and gang violence. Are those mass shootings in the same way that a school shooting is? So it's, you look at those statistics. Same with a lot of these hate speech. Well, what do they say? They say the N-word? Okay, that's hate speech. Did they say, get out of here? It's like, well, what was the context? And I know that this can be controversial, but the reason why I'm so, I reject so much of this is I watched all of this come to fore in the campus regime and kind of then eventually make its way to the government where, like we said, the hate incident would be somebody like Bubba from NASCAR who says that there's a noose on a tree and ignites like a national incident. And it turns out that that didn't actually happen at all. I've watched too many of these that my now Smollett rule, and maybe this is callous, is my default is I don't believe you. I don't. You have to prove evidence because we've just seen too many of these used for disgusting ends. I would apply the same thing to anti-Semitism. It's like, well, what are we talking about here? Like, what's real? Where I went to school, GW, famous incident. There was a girl who claimed that people were drawing swastikas on her dorm room, or maybe around it, on her whiteboard or something like that. And everybody freaked out. GW is a very large Jewish population, so they installed cameras secretly. It turned out that the girl was drawing the swastikas herself. Oh. It's like sick. It's like you're sick in the head. It's like you're trying to ignite hatred. But there's a lot of that, let's be real, in terms of attention seeking, in terms of being at the center of attention and trying to push political narratives. So I would have everybody to urge extreme caution. Every time you see one of these things, just to look for the details, the incidents. The Smollett rule has never failed me.
And it disgusts me too, because it means when you use the term for things that are not anti-Semitic, like wearing a scarf, for example, then you make the term meaningless. And so when there are genuine incidents, there was a menorah that was apparently a display that was smashed. Now, we don't know who did it and whatever, but when there are genuine incidents, then you've cheapened the language surrounding it.
Right.
And, that's bad for everyone. So the last thing that I'll say about this video, and then we'll get to, another one of these sort of like disputed incidents that I felt like we needed to cover because we covered the original video. And so anyway, we'll get into that in a minute. But, this also comes after those 3 men of Palestinian origin were shot, students, 2 of whom were wearing the keffiyeh scarf. Now, we still don't know, the details of why they were targeted, but they were walking down the street in Vermont, speaking a combination of Arabic and English, 2 of them wearing the scarf, and then out of nowhere, this dude comes and shoots them. So in any case, there seems to be this scarf inciting a lot of passions that are insane. It is a political statement. I don't think that there's anything wrong with making a political statement with your attire. People should not be stalked. They certainly shouldn't be shot for daring to express solidarity with the Palestinian people. All right, so this other piece, I feel sort of complicated about covering this, but we'll just get into it. Early on, right after October 7th, there were all these protests, and we covered here how there was just like this outright genocidal language that seemed to be coming from all directions.
I think we covered it on October 10.
And one of the most prominent examples that we covered and many other news outlets covered was this protest in Australia, where among other anti-Semitic chants, some of the protesters were allegedly chanting, "Gas the Jews." Horrific and noteworthy because in the Australian context, that could actually meet the criminal threshold for threatening or inciting violence. Whereas the other anti-Semitic chants, which have been more confirmed than that one that were being chanted, would not meet that threshold of inciting violence. So it becomes a huge story here, and certainly in Australia. There was a massive police investigation that was launched, and so far, nothing has come out of that police investigation. There's an independent Australian outlet, and this is why I was like, not sure whether to cover this story or not, but I felt like we should since we covered the original video. I don't know anything about this outlet. I did look it up. They seem activist, but somewhat legit. They've been around since 1999. Anyway, they are claiming that they have sources, and we can put this up on the screen, who are giving them information about that investigation going on into this chant. There has not been any other video that has emerged with people chanting that specific thing. They say nobody can verify it. The original video was released from this right-wing Jewish group called the Australian Jewish Association. They have refused to provide the original video. There was an analysis that was performed by verification experts that found a number of signs that suggest the audio was edited. This review, that this outlet, Crikey, was able to see, noted that the audio is out of sync with the video in places. A section of the audio was repeated during a clip. Some audio was repeated while different clips were being shown. These suggest that additional editing was done beyond splicing different video clips together. So in any case, at the best you can say, this video has been sort of called into question. Now, the other anti-Semitic, the F the Jews chants, which are also absolutely horrific, are more confirmed. So you may say like, well, why are you parsing this? What does it matter? There were anti-Semitic chants. And I would just say for two reasons. Number one, we showed the video, and so I feel like it's important to correct the record if it needs to be corrected. Number two, it's another illustration of how even things which are widely disseminated by mass media outlets can be called into question. And number three, I do think the details matter. And we've seen this in some of the alleged atrocities, which have now been debunked from October 7th. Like, October 7th was horrific enough as it was. You didn't need to add all of these things which have now been debunked, like the beheaded babies and the babies in the oven and the children that were tied together that Netanyahu said were all burned together. Those things didn't happen. Other horrific atrocities did occur. So in any case, that's why I felt like it was important to cover this clarification about this video and the questions that have been raised about its veracity.
Well, the reason why it's important is because it set off a firestorm. I think rightfully if we thought it was real. And now it turns out it may not be real. I think that's always important, especially here for us to correct it and to look at it. And it was used as justification for similar rhetoric, I think, on a lot of the Israeli side. So look, and by the way, if anybody wants to see if any of that's faked, let me know. I'll be happy to talk about it here. But I think it's important, to look and to make sure that things are real. We've had a number of incidents already of a lot of fake news that spread everywhere, with a lot of these allegations that were used specifically to hype people up. And just like Iraq, just like 9/11, post 9/11 and all of that, a lot of it falls apart, but the actions at the time remain the same. Anthrax, that's a whole other one. A lot of these things were used for a very specific purpose. It's why, again, I am so deeply dubious of almost anything that seems unbelievable, because sometimes it is unbelievable.
Hey guys, if you like that video, go to breakingpoints.com, become a premium subscriber, and help us build the best independent media organization on the planet.
That's right. We're subscriber funded. We're building something new. We want to replace these failing mainstream media organizations.
So again, to subscribe, it's breakingpoints.com.